Let's continue with our conversation on the demand for money. Welcome to today's conversation. So we continue by looking at the other technical reasons, especially to the missing money theory of the missing money. So let's continue. The first one is the misspecification. Okay, the misspecification. So the misspecification, sorry, just a minute. Sorry. Okay. The misspecification that happened in 20. Let's start. It starts here in 2022, right? Another possible explanation for negative results of the 1970s is that a single equation money demand function may be misspecified. An equation relating to real money balance, that is income, interest, may not represent a true money demand function, but a reduced form, okay, which is a mix of both money demand and supply equation, especially if the money supply set by the authorities is dependent on conditions in the economy, such as inflation and output, right? Yes. So the real money balances, income, interest rate, may not represent a true money demand equation, but it may represent a reduced form equation, that is a mix of both money demand and supply equations, especially if the money supply set by the authorities is dependent on conditions in the economy, such as inflation and output. The other technical reason would be the change in policy stance, So a change in policy by the authorities, as was the case from 1979 to 1982 in the United States, it caused a reduced form relationship to change. This explains the breakdown of the estimated demand function, okay? You can do more consultation from Goodhart, C. AE 1989, Money, Information, and Uncertainty, chapter number 10. He can make more amplification over the same. So before 1979, there was the targeting the price of money that's commonly known as the federal fund rate. Now, anyway, the targeting monetary aggregates, the targeting the quantity of money that was measured in M1, M2, and M3. There was also that, all right? The change in policy by the authorities in the USA from 1979 to 1982. There were all these changes, okay? Targeting for price for money, price of money, targeting the aggregate, targeting in the quantity of money, changes in the policies. The overly simplified econometrics could also be the technical reasoning, reasoning. Up to 20 years ago, until somewhere 20 years ago, overly simplified econometrics was in use, very simplified. And it had issues such as stationarity, that is for time series data. Spurious regression, co-integration were not addressed. The problem of stationarity, spurious regression, and co-integration, these problems, you find them in econometrics, they were not addressed for that. Okay, let's start with the stationarity test and the unit root test. Actually, this is a new approach to model estimation, where the first step is to conduct stationarity tests or the unit root tests. First approach, first step. You have to check whether the data is stationary or non-stationary. You use the unit root tests. We'll show you how to do this in econometrics. You do this in econometrics. Yes, under time series data. It is done to determine whether the variables are derived from a non-stationary data generating process, such as a random walk. Okay. If the variables are stationary, they have a constant mean to which they revert periodically and have a finite variance. That is if they are stationary. They have constant mean and they revert periodically and have finite variance. Spurious regression. Spurious regression. The regressions were indicating non-existing relationship. These regressions were called spurious regressions. You can consult this from Granger and Newbold of 1974. They really amplify the point under spurious regression. So spurious regression means not being what it purports to be, or false or fake, right? Have false regression. So most economic variables included in their regressions were generated by random walks. And the random walks are changes in a variable that follow non-discernible pattern or trend. You know, those are random walks in the changes in the variable that follows a non-discernible pattern or not trend or trend. There's not a non-discernible trend. They just move random, right? Those variables. Yeah, they change random. And these types of variables are called non-stationary because they do not have a constant mean. So they evolve in an unpredictable fashion described by a random walk, right? They change in an non-predictable fashion. When these variables are regressed against each other, can lead to an incorrect conclusion that the variables are related. You understand that? So what happens, remember you are regressing the variables, the X variables on the Y axis variables. Now, if you're dealing with the random variables, these that show you the random walk, like they just change anyhow, right? You can start ending up concluding that the variables are related, even when the variables are not actually related. That is a problem, okay? If you have the incorrect conclusion, then you have a problem. So spurious regression problem can be avoided by ensuring that all the variables are stationary. So firstly, stationary, the data have to be stationary. What could be the solution to spurious regression where we have, nonsense regression? Okay. What could be the solution to spurious regression? You should have the solution, okay, to that. Make sure that the data is stationary. Co-integration, even this was not yet explained. In this, an innovation by Engel and Granger, 1987, these guys introduced a solution to the problem of non-stationarity, right? Suggested that non-stationary variables can be combined to form a series that is stationary, all right? You can combine the non-stationary variables to form a series that is non-stationary. And this co-integrating relationship removes the non-stationarity. I'm saying co-integration. Under this one, it is suggested that the non-stationary variables can be combined to form a series that is stationary. The co-integrating relationship actually removes the non-stationarity. Okay, so what are some of the microeconomic determinants of the demand for money? The determinants, there are essentially four main determinants of money demand at the individual level, Number one, the interest differentials, which is basically the difference between the yield on money, commonly assumed in the literature to be zero, and the rate of return on other assets. So the difference between the rate of return on other assets and the yield on money, right? The difference between the yield of money, commonly assumed as the literature to be zero, and the return on other assets, the differentials. The other determinant of money demand is the cost of transfer, right? The costs. The costs associated with the transferring between high interest earning assets and the money need to purchase goods and services. And it is needed to purchase. So there is the costs. The costs associated with the transferring, those are transferring costs between higher interest earning assets and money that is needed to purchase goods and services. There is that cost of all the transfers. It's a determinant of holding money. The price of uncertainty of assets, the price and certainty of assets. There is inevitably a risk involved in holding assets, even though there exists a risk in holding money as a store of value, since we do not know for certain how many goods a given quantity of money can buy in the future due to inflation. The risk associated with the holding other interest earning asset is generally considered to be greater, right? The expected pattern of expenditure and receipts is another determinant of money demand. If individuals were paid their wages in lump sum weekly, then average cash balances would be less than if wages were paid monthly. Is there any question? Okay.